Ladies and gentlemen of the media, good morning to you all, and I welcome you to our post-cabinet press briefing for this week. Cabinet met yesterday, Wednesday, the 14th of November, and coming out of that meeting, Dr. Roger Luncheon, the head of the Presidential Secretariat and Secretary to the Cabinet, will bring you highlights on a number of matters Cabinet wished to bring to the public's attention through the media, after which we will entertain questions on his opening statement and, if time permits, on any other topical matter. I'll hand you over to Dr. Roger Luncheon.
Thank you, Kwame, and good morning again, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Cabinet met on Wednesday, the 14th of November, and arising from that meeting, these are the matters I intended to bring to yours and the public attention. Contracts, Parliament, telecommunication sector reform, GRA relocation exercise, EasyJet. I want to take this opportunity to advise also that time is available, and I'll be more than happy to address issues beyond those raised in my opening statement. Allow me then to start with contracts. Contracts for which Cabinet granted its no objections. I start with the health sector to advise that the procurement of breast milk substitute and breast milk, this is breast milk substitute for infants and breast milk substitute full cream. Yeah. Human beings are the only adults that drink milk, you know that? 2 lots, the first one for infants, 6.26 million Guyana dollars, and the second lot, the full cream, $12.98 million, a total of 19.24 million Guyana dollars. This, of course, you would recognize, or may, because it's an annual purchase, is the breast milk substitute provided to the mothers, the serology positive, HIV positive mothers whom the science indicates should not be breastfeeding their young ones. So breast milk substitutes is being, or has historically been procured for that population. Still in health, the supply and delivery of furniture and equipment, and this is in 6 lots and aggregately 19.80 million Guyana dollars. 19.80 million Guyana dollars. In security, the construction of the New Amsterdam Central Police Station, Region 6, probably rehabilitation. Construction of the New Amsterdam Central Police Station is there, it's always been there. 51.20 million Guyana dollars. 51.20 million Guyana dollars. Still in security, the supply and delivery of building material in 5 lots for the Guyana Prison Service. These lots correspond with the prison locations countrywide. A total of 37.24 million Guyana dollars. 37.24 million Guyana dollars. And lastly, in the education sector, textbooks, specifically reading books, specifically Education for All, fast-track initiative, 55,535 pounds, I am advised, equivalent to 15,549,000 Guyana dollars. 15 million. The mathematics wrong? 55,000 pounds equal 15 million average Guyana dollars. Those, ladies and gentlemen, are the awards for which Cabinet granted its no objections. Parliament. Cabinet reflected on the more recent developments in the 10th Parliament, particularly the events of the November the 8th, 2012 sitting that led to an abrupt adjournment. Cabinet assumed that the APNU, AFC parliamentary opposition intended and did indeed challenge the authority of the House. Obsessed with their motives, and again spectacularly unsuccessful at this latest attempt to unseat Minister Rohi, the opposition threw caution and compromise out. Incomprehensibly, threats, explicit and otherwise, has become part of their defiant utterances. Cabinet stood firm on its positions with regards to Minister Rohi's tenure. Doing so, acknowledging and being reassured that the ever-widening range of support and justifications for that stance of the administration had been and was being provided. Cabinet resolved to continue to impose responsibilities on the Speaker to discharge his functions fearlessly. Cabinet concluded that the way ahead in the 10th Parliament was full of uncertainty. The next sitting, scheduled for November the 22nd, 2008, leaves much for conjecture. Daily, the opposition consolidates its incomprehensible position on the Rohi's problematic, their Rohi problematic. Because of their senseless and politically suicidal note on this matter, the rest of Guyana stands bewildered and uncertain about what to expect next. Plot after plot. The Commission of Inquiry, the rulings at the High Court, the advice of senior counsel, public opinion, the APNU, AFC opposition has ignored and has failed to move forward 1 inch with their anti-Rohi antics and designs. Like addicts, they seem to prefer the ignominy of alienating Guyanese. Why? Obvious question, why? Related and equally important is the next question, what next? APNU has promised more is to come. The sittings of the National Assembly are fast becoming a stage for the antics of the extreme and the reckless, and not the home, not the house of compromise. Telecommunication sector reform. The administration and the telecommunication service providers have heightened their engagements on reform in the sector. The occasion has been the opportunity provided by the legislative attention on reform of the sector. As you know, 2 important pieces of legislation are being considered by Parliament. Telecommunication Amendment Bill 2012 and the Public Utilities Commission Amendment Bill 2012. Negotiations on liberalization, including demonopolization, will be the focus of these current engagements. Bilaterals with the 2 telecommunication service providers have started and will continue. On that basis, the governing party has informed the House of its desire not to pursue the second reading of those 2 pieces of legislation I just mentioned. The administration has also informed the telecommunication service providers of such its intention. Expectations are that the House would take appropriate notice of government's intention and act accordingly. GRA relocation exercise. Cabinet was updated by its task force appointed to oversee the GRA relocation exercise from its many Georgetown-based locations to its future new offices at Camp Street, the former Clico building. The task force appointed by Cabinet, working with GRA, has developed a plan with a timetable of completing the relocation exercise by the end of December 2012. Already rented facilities previously housing the VAT unit have been vacated and the staff relocated to Camp Street. To accommodate the hundreds of GRA staff, and the thousands of daily customers, the Camp Street facility needs significant and continuous upgrading, and particularly proper facilities management. The task force has developed the plan to ensure 100% relocation by the end of December 2012 and with a functional GRA in place. I need not say millions would have to be spent to implement that plan. EasyJet. Cabinet reviewed the rapid developments surrounding the demise of EasyJet, the low-cost air carrier. Cabinet was deeply dismayed at this outcome, the outcome of an initiative that had such welcome outputs and held such a promising future. For Guyanese, the wave of low-cost airfares to foreign destinations was directly attributed to the entry of EasyJet into the sector. Then the roof fell in. Unexpected disruptions occurred. It must be noted that EasyJet was licensed to operate in many other locations than Guyana. So at best, it was the failure, the demise, was a collective failure of regulators. The industry has responded to government's immediate overtures and government's expressions of concern. Caribbean Airlines in particular has and is assuming a significant role in offering relief to the affected EasyJet passengers. Ticket price control and monitoring, additional flights, timely interventions are all undertakings and are being introduced into the sector by Caribbean Airlines. The administration recognizes the likely impact of this disruption at this particular time, the holiday season, and it pledges to do its level best to ensure that plans made months ago for visitors to unite family, to come home, that those plans do not fail to materialize. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, those are the matters I wanted to bring to your attention. Time would allow us to venture beyond matters I raised in my opening statement, and the floor is now open for questions, clarifications, and other statements from the media. Thank you.
Yes, the GT online news. Sir, if you could start from
please, please, don't move so fast. Were you making an observation about my fondness in which I spoke, or are you asking me a question?
No, you spoke of the promise that EasyJet held.
Yes.
But EasyJet is saying that when it began to experience problem competing with Caribbean Airlines with subsidized fuel, government didn't assist EasyJet. I'm asking you to respond to that.
Oh, now you asked me to respond to that. Good. And your second question.
Could you say specifically what are some of the concerns that the two telecommunications providers have raised regarding the legislation? And as you're on the telecommunications sector, sir, could you confirm that tax payment? Could you say how much was paid? And could you say when the Guyana government stopped earning dividends on those shares?
First question, EasyJet. I think it would be fair to recognize the support, the hand of the administration, this administration, in furthering the ambitions of the investors in EasyJet. This is not to disparage similar efforts made in other jurisdictions, but definitely it was to the most appealing body, jurisdiction, because we are the ones, Guyanese, who have been assailed by this unequal treatment with high prices, comparatively speaking, and poor to unacceptable level of services. So I might arguably be in question, but EasyJet was here. My contention, our contention is EasyJet was here because of this administration. I don't pretend that in the industry the competition was indeed fierce. And there is no doubt that this is a feature not only of aviation but many other sectors. My understanding is EasyJet was soliciting the support for the administration in acting not in an even way with the players in the sector. The administration's concern was essentially access to the airwaves, at affordable prices, predictably. This is what our main concern was, to ensure EasyJet or Caribbean Airlines or Delta got an advantage vis-a-vis each other. These were of secondary importance. We wanted more airlines flying to Guyana, offering fares that were competitive and definitely were less than the pre-EasyJet entry. And that was what was achieved. There is no question about that. I said in my opening statement about the wave of lower fares that took place after the entry of EasyJet, and it is well documented. I don't feel that the criticism, if I understood you well, the criticism of EasyJet should be laid at the feet of this administration, because indeed the administration has been responsive to first and foremost Guyanese and the Guyanese need, the Guyanese expectations of fares, reasonable fares, and access to the airwaves. To go further, to go further and to engage in specific interventions guaranteed or with the aim of distorting the market, I believe one had to be careful in drawing a line. Were EasyJet to advise you what specifically they asked for, and in the context of competition, what was being provided to Delta and to Caribbean Airlines, providing subsidized fuels.
To Caribbean Airlines. They're saying that Caribbean Airlines was buying subsidized fuel from Trinidad, and they couldn't compete with that, and government stood idly by not helping.
But I thought that you spoke of government of Guyana interventions that were withheld. We weren't selling Caribbean Airlines.
No, EasyJet is saying that government stood idly by when it needed help to compete.
Well, I don't know if you brought that subject up, the question of subsidies. Remember, Caribbean Airlines is a national institution owned by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Are you perhaps saying that we should have forced? Oh, EasyJet is saying that we probably should have forced Trinidad to give them subsidized fuel, or heaven forbid, Guyana to offer them subsidized fuel, and then to give everybody else. Because if you give EasyJet, you better believe Delta, Belta, Celta, Melta, everybody can be knocking at your door.
Would you be in a position to speak definitively to EasyJet's current financial capacity? And would you be able to say if government would eventually, because we're talking about thousands of passengers stranded, would government be prepared to put some money into assisting that should Caribbean Airlines not be able to help out?
Yeah, this has to be played by ear. This has to be played by ear. I want to believe the task force, the Minister of Tourism, the Minister of Public Works, who's responsible, under which GCA falls, daily they are observing the situation as it evolves, what is being done and what is happening, and presenting to Cabinet a series of additional interventions that are justified or that the government could support. I think it will be too early now that we've had this, you might say, interventions, undertakings by Caribbean Airlines, and recently the minister advised Delta is also coming on board and expressing an interest in contributing to this recovery effort.
But you're not ruling out government backing financially.
There you go.
I would be unable to do that now.
We're not going to have.
Your second question, the telecommunications sector reform. For DGCell, it's about the demonopolization, to remove the feature in the telecommunications sector that for them is a monopoly on international calls. What Digicel has essentially said that, and we do agree on that point, that the monopoly has been indeed a brake on our economic development and on the development in the sector itself. So we see eye to eye on that. So that's their number one. And other than smaller matters, that's their most important beef. My understanding of the GT&T position essentially is these are contractual disputes. We have a 1990 contract that must be honored. We are quite willing, as I understand GT&T to be saying, we are quite willing to sit down across the table with stakeholders to plan for liberalization, including the demonopolization. For them, of course, there is a value that they're giving up, and it's the quid pro quo that really matters. Your last one, to conform. What about it?
When did that make payments, how much, and when did Guyana stop receiving dividends? When did Guyana government stop receiving dividends from GTT on the share?
I couldn't answer, but I would suspect this sales agreement was entered into in 2012. So it suggests logically were dividends to cease on surrender of the shares, it would have to be at the time when those shares were transferred. I'm not certain on the specific amounts. I might be misquoting, but my recollection is $30 million US was the price agreed upon, of which I think most of it was to be one lump sum payment, and a smaller amount, I think probably about 5 million, would be paid over some period of time, 1 year, 2 years. I don't remember the exact 1 year conform. And that occurred in the third quarter.
When is share transferred?
Gary, any extension, it has to be small doses, all right? We have other people to go.
Sorry, I wanted to ask you about the bill we passed in for the telecommunication sector that allow the two service providers to monitor calls. A few months ago, I asked whether that had begun.
Which monitoring calls?
You know, like cell phone.
Oh, you're talking about, no, I hesitate to use the word monitor and interception interchangeably. But as we speak, I will go on to explain why. But go on, Adam.
Now, are these two service providers in a position to provide this service determined by the bills? And has the government had cause to approach the courts or anywhere for information relating to certain calls?
How you put it is most unusual, most un-Adam Harris-like. But I probably have been asked that question a number of occasions before, and I have been taking it to mean the Intercept of Communication Act and not the Telecommunication Amendment Act, because monitoring, one can indeed, and we have been for ages now, accessing details of transactions on the network. In other words, working with the TSPs, that same bill that you receive as a prepaid customer or as a postpaid customer, that information could be provided on request on security grounds to law enforcement. That, sir, I want to believe is more in the realm of monitoring. I understand Adam is asking about interception, where conversations, private conversations, not luncheon calling Kwame, but luncheon speaking to Kwame during that call. Is this not what you're speaking of?
That's correct, sir.
Interception of communication is what technically it is called, and this is what the 2008 Act provides for, interception of communication. Yes, and the administration has been working with the two telecommunication service providers to ensure that that facility is put in place since 2008 and is ready, can be activated at whatever point in time the courts, the High Court, were to issue on government's pleas a warrant to so do. And we have had cause to approach the court for such warrants. The courts generally, the court, sorry, generally has been supportive of the security sector, the law enforcement sector, in its efforts at law enforcement.
Any other yes.
Dr. Martin, you have spoken on the GRA.
Who are you, please?
Oh, sorry. Marcel Thomas. The GRA transition. Are you in a position to say how much GRA is renting the building for?
I know it would sound perverse, but you got to see where the HPS in this one. I don't have a clue. I hope you could understand some of the angst that the board of the National Insurance Scheme, the owner of this property, have had and expressed. The GRA has had vacant possession for quite some time. My memory serves me well, maybe as long as a year. As long as a year.
But Dr. Martin, on the same issue, you said millions would have to be spent in renovation. Some would see this as a kind of a cash out, if you want to call it that, to NIS, a failing NIS. How do you respond to that?
Well, we're not putting out money. The scheme for this relocation, although I would be the first to concede that the building itself warranted significant expenditure to conform to the requirements that the GRA as the tenant had. And as is conventional in such matters, the tenant and the landlord, they meet and they agree. This percentage obviously is your responsibility. You can't tell me I gotta fix the roof or paint the walls. But if you want to take my nice room and convert it into a jacuzzi, you gotta pay for that. So some of the expenditure to be incurred properly, rightfully, expenditure that the National Insurance Scheme as the landlord would have to meet, and some of it is the expenditure that GRA as the tenant would have to meet.
Sorry, on NIS, could you
Sure.
say
Mary, hold, please. Hold, please.
Why you don't want the lady to finish?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I was saying that that engagement, NIS and the GRA has not been done. It's not actually started. But expenditure is being incurred, carried by GRA. And it leads one, of course, to the expectation that when the relocation exercise is completed and costed, NIS would be told, and NIS would agree, that this percentage of the expenditure was needed to take care of expenditure that the landlord has been held responsible for and NIS would have to stump up that amount.
So let me get you correctly. As is, there is no legal binding contract.
There is, but we have not invoked the clauses in the contract to go behind collection of lease payments. I don't know, put it colloquially, massa cow, massa bull. That's essentially the attitude I sense that prevails. That GRA isn't going to run away with NIS money, and NIS is not going to kick GRA out of the building.
No, no, no.
Chris,
We have
yeah,
Chris here.
sir, on the parliamentary briefing, you were running your answer to what next from the
Yes.
opposition. Yesterday they announced that they have drafted a new motion to specifically gag the minister, basically, for speaking in parliament. Would you care to
Gag
respond
who?
to that?
That Rohi.
Gag away from speaking in Parliament.
In parliament. Would you care
This
to-
is some really.
And I'd like to know if results report would be one option.
I haven't seen that motion. I would then be in a rather invidious position pronouncing on the governing party's response to that motion. But in my opening statement, I don't want you to miss that specific portion when I said that the administration holds the speaker. The administration holds the speaker responsible. He has to discharge his functions fearlessly. The speaker has done so far all the things that are necessary. He's consulted, he's got the good advice. We need him to continue to act in accordance with what is fit and proper. This is what the governing party would demand.
Your learning expenses. Two questions. NIS, the actual report is out for 2011. It spoke of the 2007 report that came. There were some recommendations that were made, but seems not to have been followed. You are sitting on the board as chairman, so could you care to say why the 2007 report, some of the measures were not that were recommended were not implemented? And following that, the NIS itself, has the cabinet taken note of that actual report, and what do they intend to do with it? And secondly, EasyJet, I think I've already mentioned that the regulators may have paid. I'm not sure, but if there's the case, could you explain?
Your second question first. I took pains to advise that EasyJet was licensed to operate in jurisdictions other than in Guyana. You must indulge the HPS at times. And in this particular instance, it had to do with some wicked people out there. Yes. Wicked people they would like. They're inveigling against the very elect. They want to confuse you. They would have you believe that you see this EasyJet here, this is a euphemism, is a shadow company of the government of Guyana and parties in the government of Guyana. I only mentioned that it was licensed to operate in other jurisdictions to attempt to destroy that notion that indeed what we did, others did. And they didn't have to be shadow owners in Trinidad or shadow owners in Canada or in the United States of America. They applied and they fulfilled the criteria that successive GCAA or parallel organizations as EasyJet walked the road to build up their network. So that's why I said that other jurisdictions operated. And if there was a fault in the way GCAA Guyana's regulators assessed EasyJet's application, well, misery likes company. We ain't the only one who I would want to believe were at fault in their assessment of EasyJet's application. Frankly speaking, I don't think that had anything to do with it. It's just these wicked people out there. Just these wicked people. I know them. I know them. God will deal with them later. Your second question, and reminded me. NIS. I'll say first and foremost, yes. There is indeed much evidence that recommendations that were made not only from the 7th actuarial review, but you may recall we did a NIS reform committee, out of which additional recommendations flowed in 2008. And the board was rather selective. The board was rather selective with regards to the recommendations that it endorsed and implemented. One concedes that a recommendation indeed is not an instruction, and it is the board's judgment at a particular point in time whether a recommendation or a series of recommendations would be entertained. We made the decision not to entertain some of the recommendations, and we made the decision to entertain some of the recommendations. It's always easy to be a Monday night quarterback and to reflect from the perspective of what is or I told you so. I'm willing to conclude, though, that the review that has been done by or during this 8th actuarial review, I'm willing to concede that the findings, they certainly do suggest that our decision with regards to specific interventions, specific recommendations, might have been given greater attention at that point in time, might or should have been given greater attention at that point in time. I'm willing to concede that.
Poison X in dire straits as the review suggests.
I put it to you this way. Dire reflects some immediacy, like tomorrow or yesterday. And I can say this greatest honesty, the greatest honesty. Those wicked people who are out there and trying to pander to this notion that this NIS is a sinking ship and it's about to go down, it's just total nonsense. Were we not to make interventions, specific interventions that have been outlined in this actuarial review, yes, hard times, dire times, but as we sit here today, the scheme is healthy. But we have to be careful because the health of the scheme today, in the context of social security schemes, is meaningless because the scheme is not about today. I must say I've graduated to the ranks of pensioner, and I intend to draw a pension for a good little while. You too. So telling me about today and the scheme being financially viable today, it begs the question, what about tomorrow? Or what about the next year or the next decade to come? And this is where, yes, we are willing to concede uncertainty prevails. And unless interventions that address uncertainty, that address financial viability, unless we agree and we implement those interventions, then we can start talking about dire times. The actuary has given some figures. He said if you did nothing in 2023 or 2021, and everybody gave a different date. Well, I don't know why. I can tell you one thing, it ain't gonna take lunch in 9 years to save your pension. So rest assured, pensioners and other contributors to NIS, that flowing from this actuarial review and the consultations we are about to mount with stakeholders, the private sector, the organized labor, pensioners, consumers in our local offices, that a menu of interventions would be put on the table, taken to Parliament. You see why Parliament must not be a place of wicked people. Taken to Parliament to be endorsed and to lay out the future operations of the National Insurance Scheme.
All right, Alicia, you had your hands up? Yes. Go ahead.
So there are some reports that NIS contributors over the years, they able to receive benefits. What's the response?
Contingent liabilities. This is a sore point. This is a sore point. And our conversion from paper records to electronic records has indeed dealt with the current and maybe even the years immediately preceding the current. But there's a wealth of paper records, roach biting, rat peeing on it, and it's sitting in cupboards, and it has your grandfather information about when he worked in the rice field, in the estate, in the police, in 1969, 1970. That information is slowly being transferred electronically. The problem is the computation of your benefits require this paper-based information to be uploaded on the system, the electronic system. We have backlogs, millions of entries, contribution. I've pleaded with and this is affecting the elderly, our older contributors who have worked and have retired. I don't know, it's a situation I feel particularly embarrassed about. And we spend a lot of money, special teams, special project to do this entry and verification exercise to try to get these people on the electronic database and to provide them with benefits. They never lose anything from the time that they become eligible to receive a benefit to the time they actually start receiving the benefit. The arrears are all captured and compiled and paid over to them.
At this point in time, would you be able to say a deadline, a specific deadline to have all of this accomplished?
In some places, they're hungry up by the neck in the wall, you know, because some people get aggrieved, you know. I don't know if you saw what happened with the EasyJet people. It's not every day you could match a big man too. Teddy, sorry, you know, that's the reality. My deadline is to get it finished as fast as we could. That's my deadline. That's why I keep saying to management.
Let me get quick. Your minor falls project, which is necessary in this country. I would ask about the road.
Yes, Adam, what about the road?
Yeah, how is it progressing? It should have been completed already. You have contractors for every segment except I think the forest one, which government is doing. And well, forget the media tour, they're going to come after Christmas. But how close to being completed is this road, and at what cost, everything else?
I can't tell you about costs. I will say this though, that abiding concerns persist. Abiding concerns persist. This is one of the more important endpoints in this whole move towards a Mile Fall hydropower and renewable energy. And we cannot for 1 second remove the focus on this road. This road is critical. And as I sit here, I could not convey to the media how concerned we are about the road and its progress. We are concerned. And all efforts are being spent on the segments that you spoke of, working to ensure that at the drop dead date, when financial closure would have occurred, that the contractor could indeed start rolling equipment off the wharves straight through the road to the Curry Brown River. I don't have that equal sense about, let's say, OLPF, the same sense of our housing drive, the way in which I'm tentative about this road.
Gary would have the final say on behalf of the media. One question only.
Dr. Martin, you spoke
It's over $30 billion now. 30, not the consult fund, you know, the NIS fund is over $30 billion. So I can't imagine Ashley would pick you up or pitch you through the window. How dare you go to the consult fund to extract funds, and you have $30 billion that we're investing at 1 and 2 and 0.5% interest in. No, we didn't. No. Carl spoke to me first in September. I had to go and look at what the situation was. And then when he spoke back to me, I told him in November, we're putting it to the board. The CEO, Brassington, has already indicated a likely course of action. I don't know how familiar you are with this matter.
17,000 more.
Well, it's not a, I'm dealing with the, yes, it's in the GTC was privatized. await their 55th birthday to join us. We didn't have the termination of employment and severance pay act then. So they waited for their 55 now. Police, Army, Home Affairs, Police, Army, Home Affairs, private sector, the aircraft people. 5 of them. Why, I think I know designing and else. What's already been decided is Major General retired Atlee. Retired Captain Jerry Gabaya. Police. I don't get the other names coming. I remember those 2 names well though.
Any idea what time they can start their work? What was the time frame?